on Wednesday night, fam, Sidney Powell dropped a case. They had, during our Wednesday show, they had the hearing in Pennsylvania. So there's a few things I want to go over. And I want to just kind of lead, fam, right out there, right off the bat, that half the shit that was in Sidney Powell's lawsuit was good and half of it was full of shit.
Yeah.
And I think we need to talk about this because I also put the old Smartmatic video out there with this, infatuation of going after the ghost of Hugo Chavez, if he's to blame. Now, listen, I'm not saying that he maybe didn't try to game his own election. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that's irrelevant to what's going on over here. These are American entities. No, I'm saying these are American entities stealing it from each other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I'm saying that he absolutely didn't rig his election because he had the support of all his people in Venezuela. And a lot of people have documented that the gray zone has gone on there. I think Abby Martin went there too and was asking the people in Venezuela during that time. Regarding Maduro and Chavez had the Chavista movement, which was entirely like supported by those people. Now, to connect the issue that Paz is trying to get to is that these machines are entirely, completely private, like owned by private corporations, and we can't see in them. So it doesn't matter. They may be in Venezuela, but that doesn't mean a Venezuelan has anything to do with it.
Yeah, smart. I mean, well, it doesn't mean that Chavez's regime has anything to do with it. It's irrelevant. We also know in 2004, Diebold in Ohio stole the election for George Bush, and that was Republican. Sidney Powell doesn't seem to go in that direction, yet she wants to drum up the ghost of Hugo Chavez's past, and nobody wants to listen to a whistleblower who might have been around. It's the same type of CIA hack whistleblowers that were around that told us that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. It's irrelevant. The framework is what's important, and that's something we need to look at. As far as Giuliani's concerned, another asshole of the past. I've said why I don't like Giuliani and what he did back in the days, as far as the prosecutor when he went after the mob and all that shit. And also the fact that he probably is withholding information when it comes to 9/11. There's a lot of questions that he has never answered that he probably knows about. However, what he's going along the lines is he's pointing out what we know as election integrity activists is wrong. I mean, you have to let these ballots be scrutinized. There are state laws, federal laws. You have to abide by them. Is it enough to overturn the election? I have no idea, but I'm glad that it's being brought up because it needs to be talked about. And regardless of not my feelings of Giuliani, these are things that need to come. We need to have a serious discussion about our elections and how do we fix them across the board. Yeah. Whether it be Biden or Trump coming out of this. This isn't about Biden or Trump. And, an election integrity activist I know, she said, you should not be partisan whatsoever when it comes to elections. You can't have your TDS making you swing one way. And to think that the Democrats wouldn't steal this from Donald Trump when they've stole it from the Democrats, from Bernie Sanders in particular twice, is just ludicrous to think that they won't play games for themselves, because it is the establishment. You pointed this out a long time ago, fam. I was a little bit late to recognize, I don't know. But then you see those Republicans on the right that are kind of forming together with the establishment. You got some rogue people on the outside on both sides. I'd like to know more, but I'd like to see more on the left come out rogue. Right. But at the end of the day, the establishment is going to do what they can do to keep people in power. And as we know, the Democratic Party would rather deal with Donald Trump than have Bernie Sanders, but they still want power back themselves, the establishment, and they're not happy with Trump and they want him out. So.
And so just to reiterate on this point, what seems to be going on is Sidney Powell is pursuing lawsuits independently for supposedly exposing the nefarious actions within the entire, within our entire government. Whereas Giuliani is focusing on the mail-in ballots and that process. He is like an official lawyer for Trump. She never signed a retainer, and she is doing the outside work, and she is also focusing on the machines and that sort of avenue. Yeah. And of course, I disagree with both of their ideology and their little spin narratives that they're trying to do. But outside of the ideology, which is my opinion, like something they should never focus on, we need to really look into these elections. 100%.
She does say that the other companies that control the software, they can do the same thing, and I appreciate when she does that. I just hate the whole the right-wing version of their Russiagate, which is the Hugo Chavez, ghost of Hugo Chavez's past. It's just stupid. When we understood that Smartmatic dead-ended in Venezuela, but you know what I'm saying? Venezuela's had a lot of corporatists hanging out there trying to fight against the Chavez regime for many years. So who's to say that they're not just flipping this thing around? You know what I'm saying? Who cares? It doesn't make a difference. You never bring up other situations where it happened in the United States in 2004. George Bush, Ohio. Everybody knows about that. All the election integrity activists know about that. So even though I do appreciate some of the language and some of the stuff coming up front, I am not fooled. Half of it is for real. Half of it is bullshit.
You have to sift through it.
You have to sift through it. But it is important that we talk about it because we know how awful these things, and especially with everything that's been going on in Los Angeles and the work that Jonny's doing. There's more information coming to fruition on that. There's a lot of people out here, a lot of candidates, Republican candidates I've been talking to that are ready to file lawsuits as well. It's not just about the Democrats. It's a partisan issue. The establishment's going to try to keep power, so let's keep peeling into it. So let's get to the hearing. We were actually doing a show while the hearing was going on. That's why we couldn't really report on it because it was going on as we were doing the show. So here we are on Friday, a couple days later. You've probably seen a lot of this all over the internet or over Facebook or Twitter or wherever you go. I'm sure there was a hell of a lot of it on Parler. I'm sure they were going nuts with this stuff, but there were some points they were pointing out. Now this is interesting too, fam, because this is a new election. It's COVID. Mm-hmm. They shotgun out all these mail-in ballots. There's a lot of people going back and saying, wait a second, you weren't allowed to do that legally in states. And in fact, in California, from what I heard from some of these Republicans, that they're going to protest that they didn't have a right to send out mail-in ballots to people unless they requested them. So that's what they're going to argue. They can't do that in Wisconsin. So let's take a look. Now we talk about mathematical anomalies, right, fam? Mm-hmm. There are people out there who's like, well, other than the mathematical anomalies, can you give me another example of evidence of where the election was stolen? Well, I really have a hard time with you moving on away from mathematical anomalies. It was the difference if there was one mathematical anomaly. There was like 10 of drop votes, of big numbers coming in, of glitches, of things that should never happen. And in about 8 states, more information is coming forward. Mm. So let's take a look at this one particular mathematical anomaly that happened in Pennsylvania and listen to the way the crowd reacts.
Yeah. Says on election day. So at the very beginning of the chart where there's a circle, it says on election day. What that indicates is there is a spike in loaded votes, 337,000 plus or minus of some votes that were added in there in one big batch. So that was an anomaly in the reporting. Normally you would expect to see a smooth curve going up, not any big spikes. That's kind of what Greg was talking about, the anomalies of loading and uploading those votes. So that big spike that occurs there is a prime indicator of fraudulent voting.
And that's 604,000 votes in 90 minutes, is that right?
Correct. This is 337 votes, 337,000 votes in that
period of time.
Yes.
And when you look at this entire curve with all these spikes, can you calculate how much of a vote that accounted for Biden and how much for Trump?
Close to 600,000. I think our figures were about 570 some odd thousand that all those spikes represent over time.
For Biden?
Correct.
And how much for Trump?
I think it was a little over 3,200.
One of the persons who did the data analysis, I don't know what the hell's going on over there, fam. That's crazy.
Yeah. I'm trying to share something, and Facebook is like calling it fake news. Calling this show fake news.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess what I'm saying. Some of the data analysis, and these are some of the testimonies from some of the people who were election officials that were shut out, that were pushed aside, that got wind of what was going on. They're giving their testimony. This is evidence right now. Now, once again, is this enough to overturn stuff? But they said it was a dump of 600,000 ballots and 577,000 of them. Mm-hmm. And this was in a short amount of time. Once again, it was either that big dump, and it was like something like 577,000 all for Biden.
Yeah, it's an anomaly, but it's also a statistical improbability. I mean, when you talk about a lightning striking twice, I mean, that's the kind of thing that you're expecting, these numbers that these people are believing. And if, regardless of how you feel about either candidate, pretending that that's not suspect is really disingenuous, especially when people who are aware of this software and understand the way these machines work, understand that these machines have been absolutely the machines in general have been absolutely horrible, but the election, the machines used to look at the signature, they weren't verifying the signatures in the proper way, and also people were only having a less than a 1% audit, if that, and most of the time it wasn't even required to hand count these ballots to verify the signature. So
in Los Angeles they threw the AI machine. It's kind of like the company that I don't know if they're Periscript that Whitney Webb talked about. Like, they're not being scrutinized, but there's other states like in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin, they get a little bit more stringent on the rules. You can't just use a machine like they do here in LA, because everybody's in La La Land, and they have to be scrutinized properly. You have to look over, and that's the way it goes. Now, it's a unique election with COVID and them shotgunning out all these mail-in ballots, and it was really kind of difficult because a lot of people are saying, we talked about some of these lawsuits, Johnny, that are going to come up where, I was talking to Raji, and Raji says, well, when it comes to the mail-in ballots and stuff, and you have to go and protest that before the election, saying that's illegal to do that, right? However, it was hard to work the courts with COVID and everything like that, so a lot of stuff has been swept under the rugs where they're going to be protesting stuff that normally would have been protested before the election because you can get into the courts now, a whole different situation. So it's just a unique mess across the board. The next one I have, kind of what, the New Hampshire thing, how do you access these machines? How do you change them? You can change them with a USB cord. You can access them remotely. Here's an election official that was around, and I want to give a big up to Sergio Gentile over here, who shared the tweet. The guy must have started an account just on Twitter to go clip up some of the Pennsylvania hearing and show us all. Thank you. Take a listen to this. And Johnny, I want your opinion on this situation because you have a lot of insight when it comes to this.
Alice. The election day USB V card flash drives, in all cases, the chain of custody and the procedures that were defined by the Delaware County Board of Elections and Election Process Review they didn't follow one. I couldn't even redline this multi-page document because the entire document would be, they didn't follow any of the procedures. So I personally observed USB V cards being uploaded to the voting machines by the voting machine warehouse supervisor on multiple occasions. I saw this personally. I brought it to the attention of the deputy sheriff who was there stationed, who was a senior law enforcement officer, and I brought it to the attention of the clerk of elections. I brought it to their attention. I objected, and I said, this person is not being observed. He's not part of the process that I can see. And he's walking in with baggies, which we have pictures of, and it was submitted in our affidavits, and he was sticking these USBs into the machines. So I personally witnessed over that happened 24 times, over 24 times. We have multiple other witnesses that saw it, including Democrat poll watchers. And we were told, I was told the next day by the solicitors, well, actually not the solicitor, but the attorney that we had secured, that they said every election they leave a couple of USBs in the voting machines and they're brought back, and generally the warehouse manager comes over and puts them in. So in talking to the U.S. Attorney General McSwain and other law enforcement officers, I found out that was not the case, that generally, more than two is unusual. So they denied they did it, but as of today, 47 USB V cards are missing, and they're nowhere to be found. So I was told personally that these 24 to 30 cards that were uploaded weren't there. Those cards, I demanded that they didn't update the vote live time. They only updated it about once every 2 or 3 hours. I demanded.
Johnny, what can you do with a USB cord to go into these machines?
I mean, USB has files, and you know what you can do with USB. There's memory there. You can put fake ballots into the servers. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. You guys have seen my video, right? Where I found the USBs, and actually this time around, they had walls over their in that little station I zoomed in on in this video. Let me see real quick.
What is the station over there?
That's outreach, isn't it?
Where's the station over there with the computers?
Yeah.
What station is that? Is that like a...
So that's where all the information that's coming from these tally machines are going over there.
Okay. All right.
So that's where you're compiling all of the numbers.
Right. And they're connected to the internet.
No, they're connected to these devices.
Okay. Well, it kind of looks like
So
if they get the results, then.
And it's funny, Johnny, because in the next segment we're going to talk about that right off the jump, because it was listed in Sidney Powell's lawsuit that it's not allowed to have connectivity to the internet whatsoever. It's against state and federal laws. So right there, that's illegal right there. That's illegal. They cannot do that, because now anybody can remotely access these things, correct?
You don't even have to be there.
I mean, yeah, you can be in Peru.
You can be in freaking Afghanistan.
In Germany.
Hey, Germany.
But anyways, now in the general election, instead of in primary election, I was able to see it. That's what you saw in the video. I was able to see this in the right now in the general. They have walls blocking off everything.
Yeah,
and they're transparent, but then there's stuff in the way, so you can't see the computers.
That's how they get away with it.
Yeah.
So.
I'd like to have more these machines they're using too. I want to have a little bit more conversations about where they come from and who owns them, whatnot, because there's a little bit of a confusion right now, since the Alex Padilla and Dean Logan kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Crusade to try to convince people that this is an open source system. Where we showed up that day, remember, hey, it's open source, really? Can we get the source code? Well, we don't have the source code. Well, that's the definition of open source, right?
They try to say they're really transparent and everything, but I can say with confidence that there is a huge lack of transparency here, and I will always say that there's a huge lack of transparency in the largest county in America.
Yeah.
For their elections.
And it's not about Donald Trump or Joe Biden. It's about these down ballot candidates, these local people that deserve a fair shot, that deserve a fair handshake. This is the most important thing, fam. This is the foundation of our democracy, for our republic, or whatever you want to call it, is the fact that we have elected officials or representative government. And if they can always cheat, don't be naive to think they'll just cheat Donald Trump. I'm not going to cheat Maria Estrada. No.
We don't have democracy because we don't have fair and transparent elections.
So we're going to dive into a little bit more, because once our good friend Brent Turner, who kind of cornered Alex Padilla in a press conference, we got Jeff Klein, somebody else got Dean Logan, and we kept on asking for the source code. Alex Padilla then called a press conference and said, well, it's not the traditional open source where you get the source code and you can look into it. It's not the traditional one. I mean, really, these people, that's not even an obfuscation. That's just a fucking lie.
Yeah.
Sorry for cursing, Mom, but it's just a lie, and that's what they're doing, because this is not a true open source system. And inside the contract, it says if you have a complaint, you have to go through Smartmatic, which is who we think owns the machines, who created this and stuff. But so we're going to have more conversations. We're going to do more investigation into this to see what's what, because I know there's a lie and kind of a hoodwink. And, if they hoodwinked you before, they're going to continue to hoodwink you. And the main thing I'd like to see is us get a hold of this software, but I don't think it's ever possible. We'll continue to follow the cases that go on. But Johnny's got some explosive stuff, too, as well, when he's talking about this 1% audit, because it's not an audit. It's not a proper audit, and it's kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
This election, this is the last video from Pennsylvania. Do you have something else to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, is there anything on Wisconsin?
Not on Wisconsin. Okay. This is the last one on Pennsylvania. But I just want to point out this last one, because the gentleman got a round of applause, because this is something he's saying. He says, listen, and this is what we wanted in 2016, right? Bernie Sanders, this is this right here. Put your flag down now and let's stand our ground here. The gentleman's saying the same thing. Right now, we cannot move forward and fix anything until we fix this election. So take a look.
Excuse me. All right. Let me finish with this. May I suggest to you that any restoration of faith on the part of Pennsylvanians in our electoral system can and will only be accomplished after an investigation into this election, only after the law is properly applied to this election. The idea that we can just move on by making sure that the law is properly applied in the next election is, in my opinion, unacceptable.
All right. Planting the flag in the ground. That's all I'm saying. We don't move forward. We fix it now. It should have been done in 2016, fam.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, really, really quick. Let's go over this one here because this has been out there. You probably had a lot of time. Wednesday night I started diving into it, but I had to peel eggplant, peel potatoes, and brine stuff to get things ready, so I couldn't get into it too crazy, but I did look over it. It's the lawsuit in Georgia. The highlights it points out, like I said, half of it, it's full of shit. In the beginning, fam, the Hugo Chavez thing. In the end, the Hugo Chavez thing. This mentality, Alex Jones, we got to fight against communism here. Like, listen, let's just get our election straight and stop about the whole war between communism and socialism and capitalism and choice and no choice. I think we have to have a conversation about that down the road too, fam, because I want to get your mindset on what we're looking for and what we can come about, you know what I'm saying, when it comes to our system. But anyways, there were some great things in here. And it starts off with one of the things, it's number 16, I believe it is, Johnny, where it talks about at least 9,600 absentee ballots were requested and counted, but were never recorded as being returned to the county election board by the voter. Thus, a minimum of 96,600 votes must be disregarded, the suit says. That's number 16. Now, I want to point out the whole tactic of what they're trying to do. What's going on over here? The tactic in which the Giuliani and the Trump team lawsuit, what they're trying to do is pretty much, and they cited an early case, and somebody was telling me about case law, Johnny. Sometimes you can cite case law, but that means that case might not have won. You're just using it, so right. A lot of discrepancy comes in here. But they're using a case law that says that you can disregard, so you don't have to prove that your ballots are valid. You can prove that your opponent has a lot of invalid ballots, removing the tally, and then therefore changing the election results. I didn't read into that case, but I was kind of looking over the top of it. But that's what it says. Additionally, Evidence Board of Elections records demonstrates that at least 96,600 absentee ballots were requested and counted, but were never recorded as being returned to the county election boards by the voters. Thus, a minimum of 96,600 votes must be disregarded. So once again, fam, she's trying to do the addition by subtraction, take away from Biden's count, say his ballots never were scrutinized, the mail-ins, and we must invalidate some of them and pull them away. At the same time, she's keeping her eye and she's going after Dominion and Smartmatic and that whole 9 yards and keeping it over there. So that was one point right there. Anything to say about that?
No, go ahead.
All right, so Kemp, the governor, and Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, rushed to purchase the Dominion voting systems and software in 2019 for the 2020 elections without due diligence and disregarded safety concerns. That was in number 12, Johnny, of the document. Just really quick, want to point that out. We did a little story on that before we talked about that. They really rushed through this process. And a lot of voter integrity activists out there in Georgia were screaming, saying, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. They pushed it through. Sidney Powell also, I guess, has information or money that showing money lines that there's some kickbacks. I don't know if she's going to cite that in another lawsuit, but she's pointing out the negligence of them rushing through and pushing this Dominion system through without the proper due diligence. Defendants Kemp and Raffensperger rushed through the purchase of the Dominion voting machines and software in 2019 for the 2020 presidential election. A certificate from the Secretary of State was awarded to Dominion voting systems, but is undated. So similarly, the test report is signed by Michael Walker as the project manager, but is also undated. So she's trying to point out negligence of them pushing through this machine because they have profitable ties to them, that they're helping out their family. Hey, you put in Dominion, we'll give you some scharol. You give it to your fam, the same way that, the whole you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours kind of mentality. And she's trying to point that out in the lawsuit. Now, that's speculation. She's got to prove money ties. But it does cast a shadow of a doubt to the public about these machines in general. So I do like the fact that we have to start looking about who owns these machines and what they're doing.
Right, because that is going on. I mean, millions of dollars were donated by these Periscript, these people involved with the company Periscript, to the Democratic establishment. Yes. So that is something that is true. And when those kinds of vast amounts of money are given to a specific politician, it's not just because they like somebody. It's because they have vested interests that they want this politician to pursue in their favor. So that is in a way opening the door to looking into the machines and who is supporting these machines and who they're backed by and who they're supporting politically.
Yeah. And I think that one of the boards of Smartmatics was on Joe Biden's transition teams. I think that was what's his name. I was just saying his name. But anyways, well, I'll look more into that to make sure and kind of tie those lines too as well. The last thing I want to point out real quick from the document, and then because the last two are just, I have to look into the last one and understand the law, but connected to the internet, right? It's against the law. Right. Jonny pointed out, he showed you that tie, and that, right? He showed you the cord. Now I want you to read this. Number 9, indeed, under the professional standards within the industry in auditing and forensic analysis, when a log is unprotected and can be altered, it can no longer serve the purpose of an audit log. This physical evidence that standards of physical security of the voting machines and the software are breached and machines were connected to the internet in violation of professional standards and state and federal laws. You are not allowed to have the intranet in there, fam. It's illegal. If you have the intranet, that's the Goomba way of saying internet. It can be hacked. It can be moved. It can be controlled. Right. Maybe it's in Germany. We've talked about. We don't know. But once again, that's when Jonny said, what's that Ethernet cord over there? Yo, that's illegal. And when Jonny gave the O-K, he had the O first and the K. That was him slow going, no, you're not allowed to do that. So
he's much more secretive about that. I'd be like, are you fucking kidding me, woman?
No, okay. Yeah. That was the Jonny moment.
I would have been rolling my eyes like, yeah. Okay.
The lawsuit also points out that Fulton County workers had the claim. Remember the evacuation about the water leak? I want to get some more information. There's some stories. I was looking at that. I want to look into that. But what there was a water leak. They kicked everybody out. Mm-hmm. Some people stayed behind and did who knows what. And then they were allowed to come back in and finish in their counting. There's a lot of shit going down. Our boy Anomaly did a whole story on that. Like, why don't you send somebody down there to see if that water leak was real? Why don't you send somebody down there? You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people saying it was full of shit. I want to get a little bit more information. Also, the last one they point out is the state officials in the settlement with the Democratic parties made changes to the election procedures that violated both state law and the U.S. Constitution. Once again, harping the same thing in Pennsylvania. The Secretary of State is not allowed to go to a judge and change a law. Only the legislation body, can make that change. So that's, again, what she's citing in the case. There's a lot more things in there. And a lot of the Hugo Chavez bullshit,
right?
Which is just so freaking annoying.
Going on that, yeah. I mean, Pasta, just to play devil's advocate, though, that is it loses any support that you could have from, like, we're asking for the left to pay attention to election integrity, and once you put that in there, it's a complete turnoff, because we're sitting here as one of the only people on the left discussing it, 100% discussing election integrity, in spite of, the muddy waters that it's been thrusted in. And so when you put that narrative out there, it's just like, because it's so false. It's so false. Not just because of the ideology, but it's also because it's so false. They're going to grab that and compare it to Russiagate. And the Democrats are going to take advantage of that, because they're going to use the left to see, like, let's mock this. How stupid
they are. Yeah,
let's mock this.
Yeah. And, I don't give a shit if it was a tactic. We reported maybe she was trying to goad them out to get a lawsuit so she can get discovery, right. Whatever the case may be. Right. I'm done with it. It's like it's more harmful. And I see even Republicans starting to say, yeah, it does. And I see even some Republicans saying, well, that this is not in the best interest of the president by calling this shit out. But it does make us pay attention to where these machines are, how bad these machines can be. Because we've been saying this for a long time. How can you have proprietary software with public funding? This isn't right. We have to change the framework.
Well, she can do that without mentioning Venezuela and Hugo Chavez.
Absolutely. And if she's going to name one, she better name all. She doesn't ever mention 2004 with Diebold, where George Bush, the Bush clan, stole the election from from Kerry in 2004, and they were flipping votes there, and that was there. I as an election integrity activist, all of us, it's hard for us to believe that this all stemmed from the evil Hugo Chavez communist government. And I'm not even saying that maybe he didn't take advantage of it. This shit's been going on for a while, and it's been mainly used by oligarchs in the United States playing God with our votes. Period. We don't even need to go to this outside influence, whatnot. Oh, there was foreign influence. Fine. Hey, man, if that's what you're saying, that's what you're saying. But we also have to concentrate the way we manipulate it here. The establishment, they're the ones pulling the strings. They're the ones who should be held accountable. Just so we can know, I put up this Smartmatic history, the little piece I think CNN did years ago, and I just wanted to put it up. Are the tweets unavailable? It's gone? It's probably gone. Okay. Well, here it is. I want to be fair in playing this, but once again, here we go.
Antonio Mujica and his partner Alfredo Anzola received a small business loan from the Venezuelan government only months before the recall election. These corporate registration documents from Venezuela show the Venezuelan government owned 28% of the stock of another company they started, Bizta, which adapted voting software for the Smartmatic machines in the 2004 elections. The same document shows a Chavez government minister, Omar Montillo, was on the board of directors. The Chavez government gave Bizta, Smartmatic, and another company a $91 million contract to run voting machines for the 2004 election. The next year, the owners of Smartmatic, primarily owned by Venezuelan businessmen, bought Sequoia, one of the top electronic voting system companies in the United States, for $16 million. Smartmatic is a labyrinth of international holding companies owned by Venezuelan businessmen. Smartmatic Group NV of Curacao, Netherlands, Antilles owns Smartmatic International BV of Amsterdam, Netherlands, owns Smartmatic Corporation of Florida, which bought Sequoia Voting Systems of California, USA.
That's good.
When
right
Smartmatic bought the U.S. voting...
All right, be careful.
So I don't want to kind of harp on this stuff, fam. And once again, that supposedly they're scrubbing this off Twitter right now, and we're trying to figure out what's what. But yeah, I mean, Smartmatic did dead end in Venezuela. We looked it up, but we didn't know what was what. But yeah, your thoughts on the video? Anything?
Yeah, so I don't think this proves that it's Hugo Chavez. I mean, I think this proves that there are interests in Venezuela who wish to overthrow the socialist communist regime there, and have for a very long time, and may have vested interest in cooperating with certain elements in the United States government to do that. We saw that happening with Juan Guaido, and there are plenty more like Guaido, and I think that is definitely more along the lines of what could be happening, because the United States has always tried to impose themselves into Venezuelan interests. We've seen it time and time again, because not just because of the oil, but also because of they want to crush the anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist sentiment that is there in South America, and you see it in Bolivia as well. So I think that there's more of a connection to be explored there, rather than the whole it's Hugo Chavez that she is Sidney Powell has been pushing.
It's kind of funny, because when we talk about this whole situation about, and a lot of stuff with China and Iran comes out, and then also Venezuela and whatnot. And any way you look at this, I still look at our aggressions first to put people in any positions whatsoever. We have to remember that we've casted the first stone. And I'm not saying that every single thing we do is evil, but we do a lot of bad shit. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times we manipulate governments for our own resource extraction needs. And you can't hide that. You can't deny that. And when you look at some of these studies on how many governments we try to overthrow, what I'd like to do is for us to just stay out. If that's a nationalistic mentality about getting away from these countries, closing our bases and coming home and spending that money here, so be it. I'll wear that label. I just want us to stop interfering with other countries.
It's not nationalistic. It's anti-imperialist.
Well,
because you can still have fair trade. You can still do things the right way. But it's literally not going into these countries. It is an anti-interventionist stance, and I think more Americans need to really understand that. All it does is it screws us here, and it screws people over there, and creates more enemies for us under the guise of spreading democracy, right?
Yeah. And like I said, let's keep our eye on the prize here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not the ghost of Hugo Chavez who fixed this last election, or the primaries. It's the establishment.
Or Vladimir Putin,
or Vladimir
any
Putin.
of these people.
Notice that since the Democrats got their win, Vladimir Putin had nothing to do with this election.
Yeah,
it's almost laughable, and once again, the way they just hoodwink people and just sheepdog people into people have TDS. TDS is a real thing, fam, and it's crazy.
No, they're saying that he had nothing to do in the general election, but because Republicans won in the congressional races, they're saying that there was interference.
Oh, there was. All right,
Yeah.
Putin interfered. Putin wants Republicans, I guess.